As a geologist and rock hound, I do a lot of rock collecting. And many of my finds will wind up on a shelf like this. But it is also fun to learn how to process your finds and turn them into polished specimens or even jewelry. And so in this video, I'm going to discuss some of the tools that can be used to process your finds, and some ideas for what you can do with the things that you find out rock hounding.
One of the easiest, cheapest methods to process your finds when rock hounding is learning how to tumble. Getting a little cheap tumbling machine and learning how to step through. The main thing with tumbling is you have to know the hardness of the material that you're putting into a single batch, and they need to be the same hardness. So all of these are quartz based, so they have the same hardness, and so when they're in the tumbler together, they don't grind each other to dust. If you were to put something softer like feldspar in with the quartz, you would wind up with no feldspar because it would get ground away by the toughness of the quartz. So you just have to make sure that all your material is kind of the same hardness. And it takes a while, you know, it can take weeks to step through. If you're polishing found river pebbles that are already kind of rounded, then it can go faster. But in general, plan on it taking many weeks to get from rough to tumble polished. But it is an option and kids love to do it. So that's one way that you can process your geologic finds. So another way to process your finds from the field is with cutting and polishing on a cabbing machine, using a trim saw to first cut the rock, and then, you know, staging through different grits of polishing wheels to get to that high gloss polish that is so beautiful with raw materials like these. So here's one of the nodules that I found in the Hemes rock hounding this summer, and when I cut it open, it was just kind of disappointing. I think that's like a little cristobalite or something like that. I'm not really sure. This is a calcite and quartz nodule from southern New Mexico that I found, and just got lucky when I cut it. These crystals that are in there weren't damaged, so the other half of it had crystals also. So it's fun to cut them in half with petrified wood. It can be fun to leave it raw and then just cut one in and polish that, just to make it a nice little specimen for your cabinet or mantle or whatever. Same thing on this one. This is a nice little piece of palm wood, and I just again cut that end off and polish it up on different grit stages to give it a polish, not a super high shine. This is one of the agates I found this past summer, and with this one I just kind of freeform cut all the way around it and polished each side, just so the banding of the agate would stand out. And I left the top kind of natural. And this one's kind of the same story. I left it in its general found shape. I just cut a couple windows into it to emphasize the beauty of the agate without completely transforming it into a cab or something. So you kind of need a little bit more equipment to do cutting and polishing like this. I'm sure Dremel tools with the right types of bits and discs could do some of this, you know, smaller scale stuff. The first tool that I use when I'm cutting is this trim saw here, and it's great to get the rough edges off and give your rock kind of a basic shape if you're trying to cut a cab. So trim saw is great for cutting, you know, geodes in half, or just trimming down your finds to make them, you know, better for display. If you have the equipment to, like a lapidary machine, then it's also fun to learn how to make cabochons, which are just flat-backed stones of various shapes and sizes that have a dome top that can be fit into jewelry. This is my cabbing machine. You start with this diamond impregnated wheel here, and then once you get the basic shape that you want, you can start stepping down with the polishing wheels till you get that polish, the high polish that you want. And that's how I take my finds from raw to something that I can display, either cutting a little window and polishing it, making a cab, or, you know, cutting off the end of a petrified wood branch and just polishing that tip just for display purposes. If you have really big things that you want to polish, then a cabbing machine is just not going to work. You need larger tools. And so in this case, this large piece of petrified wood, my husband cut and polished that using a wet angle grinder. It's a fantastic tool. It's not too expensive. Comes with all these different grit pads that you just swap out as you stage up. And it goes fairly quick. It doesn't take too long. And angle grinders really aren't as expensive as, say, like the large polishing drums the professionals would use to cut and polish really large pieces of wood like that right there. So an angle grinder is a fantastic option. Starts off with the diamond to smooth out the surface that you're trying to polish, and then you just step through all the grits slowly until you get to the polish that you want. So highly recommend getting into angle grinding polishing if you are interested in processing large finds. This is a faceting machine, and you can cut all sorts of gem materials on this. The main idea is that you have these different angles that you set the machine at, and then you have stages that you rotate around the stone to actually make the cuts, the facets. So you can see I'm working on this purple cubic zirconium here. Your stone goes on the dop, and then you facet around. You have to switch over to a cone dop once you get the pavilion cut, and then you cut the top. And you use different grits of discs, cutting discs, and then you have different materials for polishing. You follow a fastening diagram like this, and it takes a lot of practice, and I'm a complete novice at it, but it's fun. Here's some of the things I've faceted, or like this one my daughter faceted. It's a cubic zirconium. You want to use cheap materials like glass and CZs when you're first learning how to facet. This is a piece of quartz citrine that I cut. You can see that, you know, I'm a novice at cutting, and so, you know, this table's too big and it's a very basic cut, but it's really fun. And what I want to say about learning how to facet is that a lot of states and cities have facetors guilds that you can join, and they have workshops where they'll teach you how to facet stones without making the investment into machinery. And that's how I learned how to cut stones, was from my local Facetors Guild here in New Mexico. Great bunch of people, and you can take it as far as you want to. I do it as a hobby, but other people have become professional gem cutters through learning with the guild. So that's definitely a good option to look into if you are interested in learning how to facet. If cutting and polishing your own stones is a little intimidating, you can learn how to wire wrap your raw materials with no processing whatsoever. There's tutorials online that will teach you how to do different wraps on different shapes of crystals. Here's a Herkimer diamond that I just simply wrapped in silver, straight out of the ground. This is a piece of nacimiento petrified wood, copper replaced wood, and I just did
very simple wrap on it in its raw form. River pebbles wrapped in sterling silver. This is a crystal from Mount Erebus volcano down in Antarctica. I just wrapped it up so I could wear it on a piece of leather. A rough topaz crystal that I wire wrapped so that I could wear it. Just wire wrapped some beads to go along with. And there's a necklace. So learning how to wire wrap rough materials is one way that you can start to turn your finds into jewelry. If you like the idea of making your own cabs, there's also lots of ways that you can turn a cab into jewelry, again, with wire wrapping techniques. Not hard to learn, minimum tools, just a few different types of pairs of pliers and some wire, and you can make your own jewelry. There's all different tutorials nowadays on YouTube that will teach you how to do these basic wraps. So wire wrapping cabs is another technique to turn your finds into jewelry. You can also learn how to fabricate bezels out of sterling silver to turn your finds into jewelry. So here's a petrified wood cab that I made, and then I fabricated a sterling silver setting so that I could wear it as a necklace. Simple bezel for a cab with a little homemade bail to again turn a cab that you cut from material that you find and turning it into jewelry. Of course, fabrication takes more tools than wire wrapping and more skill. It's highly recommended that if you want to get into fabrication with precious metals, that you take a class and learn how to do it right from an expert. The community colleges around the country often have low-cost classes, and also the jewelry making supply stores, the professional supply stores, often have classes where you can learn how to do basic bezel making and soldering and stuff like that. I just want to call out the work of a couple of rockhound jewelry artists whose work I greatly admire. They really have the skills that they've developed for turning their rockhound finds into amazing works of jewelry art. So this is a carved obsidian pendant made by the very talented Karen Britt of Ozone Fine Art. And she found the obsidian and then she hand carved it using Dremel tools. And then she fabricated the setting and made the necklace. So she really is a one-stop shop of talent and skill. This is the kind of work I aspire to be able to do with my rock finds. The other person that I want to call out is a business called Silver Slag. And she is a rockhound, amateur geologist, self-taught metalsmith who goes out and finds agates and petrified wood all over Southern California from the mountains and the deserts. And then she cuts and polishes the stones and then sets them in these amazing, beautiful landscape works of art. And I can't recommend her work enough. I absolutely adore the fact that she's the finder and the processor and the jeweler. And, it's just another example of a very talented rockhound who has learned how to make works of art out of their finds. Whether you leave your finds raw or like to slab, cut windows, tumble polish, or cab, facet, and make jewelry from your finds, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave me a comment about how you like to process your rockhounding treasures, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, Rockhounds.